everybody, welcome back boys and girls. It's your main math man, Miss Shank, coming to you live from Summit Academy. In this video, working on that unit 4, lesson number 6, still working with solving equations, and we're going to be working on solving equations with variables on both sides. So make sure you can follow these steps when you are solving these equations. So it has the triangle and the square have equal perimeters, and again, perimeter is just the sum of the sides. And so what we can do is we can add up all the sides and set them equal to each other. And so it has a triangle, it has those side lengths, and for that square, again, make sure you can remember I can write x plus 2 for each of these sides. So I have x plus 2 for all 4 sides. And now what I can do is I can set and find the perimeters. So I'm going to say for the triangle, I'm going to have 2x plus 2x plus x minus 8, since I added up all the sides. And then for the square, I'm just going to have x plus 2 4 times. I have x plus 2 plus x plus 2 and plus x plus 2. So notice that I have each of these 4 times because I have 4 sides on that square. So now I can combine like terms. So make sure you can combine like terms. That means if they share a variable in common, I can add their coefficients together. So what that means is like this. I'm going to work on the left side first. I'm going to say I have 2x, another 2x, and a positive 1x. And I'm going to add those together to be 5x, and then the negative 8 comes down. On the right side, same kind of setup. I have x plus x plus x and plus x. So altogether, that's going to be 4x. Then I add the 2's together, plus 8. Now I can look for the coefficient that has the the lowest, and that's what I'm going to add the opposite to both sides. So I'm going to get rid of the 4x. I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. I'm going to say, all right, I have just x minus 8 equals 8. Make sure you can get the constants to the other side. So add 8 to both sides. I'm going to have x equals 16. So again, make sure you're just following those steps very simply. Alright, and the next part, it says without solving, identify whether these equations have a solution that is positive, negative, or 0. And so you can kind of, if you want to, in your head, kind of take those first steps. But if I look and see, I can say, hey, I have a positive x that's equal to another positive x, so that means that these are going to be positive. So these first couple ones are going to be positive, even though I don't have to do any steps to solve them. I can say that they are going to be positive. Same idea with this one. So if I get rid of the 11 on both sides, I would say, hey, this has to be 0 actually. For this one, even though I have negative x, I would be subtracting 9 from both sides, so this is going to be a positive answer though. Again, you can check to see if these work out, but the results should be like that. This is going to be, however, a negative answer, and this is going to be a positive answer. All right. And the next part, for 6.3, it says, which would you rather solve? So here's a bunch of different equations I have them boxed off. I want you to pick 3 equations that you think will be difficult or least difficult, and I want you to try to then solve them. So then on the back of your page is where you have some space to pick 3 equations to solve. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple that are on here. You don't have to pick these, but I'm going to just at least show you how they're done. Excuse me. So on the back, I can do, I'm going to say write and solve 3 equations. So I'm going to do H. And what I need to do first is I need to do that distributive property. So distributive be multiplying each term on the inside of the parentheses by the outside amount. So what I'm going to do is like this. I have -5 on the outside, and I'm going to be multiplying it times x and 4. So I have to multiply each of those terms by -5. So if I do -5 times positive 1x, that's -5x. And if I do -5 times positive 4, that's going to be -20. Same kind of idea for this set of parentheses here. It's like I have like an imaginary 1 here, so I need to make sure that I am multiplying each of those terms by -1. So same thing, set it up like so, and make sure you can have enough space for yourself, but I have it like this. So I have positive 8 and a -1x. So this is going to be -8, and this is going to be positive x. So now I can write what I have inside of the boxes, I can write underneath of the parentheses. So everything else outside of the parentheses stays the same. So I have x minus 5x minus 20 equals x minus 8 plus x. Make sure you can combine like terms. So I'm going to say I have an x and a -5x is going to be -4x. The -20 comes down. And then on the right side, I have 1x and another 1x combined is going to be 2x minus 8. Make sure you can add the opposite to both sides. So I'm going to add 4x to both sides. Four x's cancel out. I have -20 comes down. Right side, I have 6x minus 8. Try to get the constants to the other side. So I can add 8 to both sides. Excuse me. The 8's cancel out, the 6 comes down, so I have 6x and then -12. Divide both sides by that coefficient, so divide both sides and get my answer. I'm going to say x equals -2. And if you need to, make sure you can check on Desmos to make sure your answers are correct, but I'll do that in the next section. For the next part, I'm going to do I on the back, top, middle. Same kind of distributive property. I have to do 2 times each of the terms inside the parentheses. So I'm going to do 2 times 2x and a positive 1.5. So I'm going to say this can be 4x, and this is going to be a positive 3. So now I can write it underneath. So I have 4x plus 3 equals 18 minus x. I have to get the variables on one side, so I add the opposite of the lower coefficient. So I add x to both sides, the right side cancels out, 18 comes down, and now I have 5x plus 3 equals 18. Get the variables on the other side, so I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So now I have 5x equals 15. Always last step, divide by that coefficient, so always divide by what number is attached to the variable. And so I have x equals 3. Then my last choice that I did, again, you can pick any 3 equations, but the last one I did is j. And so I'm going to do, for my distributive property, I have -8 times, I have -1x and -5. Again, make sure you're multiplying carefully. Make sure you're multiplying if it has a variable, just multiply the coefficients together. So this is going to be positive 8x, and this is going to be positive 40. Write it underneath, so I have 2x plus 49 equals 8x plus 40. Subtract 2x from both sides since that's the lower coefficient. And so I have, this is 49 equals 6x plus 40. Subtract 40 from both sides. That way I can get the constants all on one side. And so now I have, this is equal to 6x equals 9. Make sure you can, make sure it's still in there. Make sure you can divide by that coefficient. So I divide both sides by 6. And I can say x equals 3/2. Alrighty. So now underneath that, it has that practice. Again, I kind of split it one piece at a time. But just make sure you can combine like terms, solve each equation for x, and checking in Desmos, which we'll show here in a second. So make sure you can solve all your steps. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to combine like terms first. So I'm going to say I have 2x and a negative 5x on the left side. So that's going to be negative 3x. I can say if I have 8 and 3, I'm going to say that's going to be 11. So make sure you're careful. Again, add those integers together very carefully. On the right side, I don't have any terms with x in it, so I just bring down the 8x. And then I can say I have negative 13 and negative 5, which is going to be negative 18. Make sure you can add the opposite to both sides. So I'm going to add 3x to both sides. And so left side cancels out, 11 comes down. This is going to be 11x minus 18. Make sure you can add the opposite to both sides, so I have plus 18 to both sides. And so this is going to be 29 equals 11x. And my last step is to divide both sides by 11 to get my answer. I can just leave it as a fraction, that's totally fine. So make sure you can take and see how you can check by graphing. So what I'm going to do is let me actually move, let me write this up here. I'm saying x equals 29 over 11. Okay, so let me pull up Desmos. Okay, so what you have to do, just like last time, or in the previous video, you're going to set one side of the equation equal to the other. So I'm going to type in the equation exactly as it looks. So I have 2x plus 8 minus 5x plus 3. So there's one equation, and then my other equation is going to be negative 13 plus 8x minus 5. Again, wherever they intersect is going to be that point. And if I look at that x value, well, it doesn't look like I have 29 over 11, but what I can do is I can type in and say, well, what is 29 over 11? So notice how it has that 2.63. Well, that's exactly what it has, as that 2.636, which is what we're looking for. So notice how, we're looking for that x value on where they intersect. So let me write that down one more time. So where the two lines intersect is where the solution is at. All right. Same idea for the next part. I'm going to solve and check. Make sure you can combine like terms on one side first. So I'm going to say, well, I have 2x and a negative 5x. I'm going to combine those two together to get negative 3x. And then I could say I have positive 7, positive 8. Those are going to combine to be positive 15. On the right side, make sure you can distribute the 3. So I'm going to do 3 times each of the terms inside the parentheses. So I have times 5 and times 6x. So this is going to be 15, and this is going to be 18x. So I have this is going to be 15 plus 18x, and then the minus 12x comes down. Still have to combine like terms because there's now terms with x on both of them, so I have to do negative 12x and 18x. So the rest of it stays the same. So I have negative 3x plus 15 equals 15, then minus 6x. Make sure you can add the opposite to both sides. So the lower coefficient is a negative 6. So I'm going to add 6x to both sides. Left side is going to be 3x plus 15 equals 15. And right away, since I have x plus something equals that same number, I could probably make that prediction. It should be x should be 0. But we'll prove it here in a second. So I have 3x equals 0. Last step, divide both sides by 3. And we have x equals 0. So make sure you can write it for yourself. We're saying when x equals 0, it should be where our two lines meet. So let's type in our equation and clear these out. So we said our left side, or our first equation, is going to be 2x plus 7 minus 5x plus 8. Second equation is going to be 3 times quantity 5 plus 6x minus 12x. We got some different lines. Again, you can move your graph around, click and drag, and it's saying, hey, when x equals 0, we have our solution. So be able to, move your graph around, be able to find where those two lines meet. All right, so let's go on to the next one. So now as this step, make sure you can do that distributed property first. So I have 2 times quantity, and let me make that a little bit more horizontal. There we go. So we have 6 and negative 1x. So that's going to be 2 times 6 is 12. 2 times negative 1x is negative 2x. Write that underneath. So I have 2x minus 3 equals 12 minus 2x plus 7x. Make sure you can combine like terms. So I have negative 2x and a positive 7x is going to be 5x. Bring down the rest of it, so 12 plus 5x equals 2x minus 3. Look for that lower coefficient. So I subtract 2x from both sides. Left side cancels out, negative 3 comes down. I have 12 plus 3x. Make sure you can get those constants on the other side, so I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. So now I just have on the right side positive 3x and negative 15. Divide both sides by that coefficient, so divide both sides by 3, and we should get x equals negative 5. Last time to check, we have x equals negative 5. And let's plug it in our wonderful Desmos calculator. So let me pull that up one more time. So we're going to say our original function, or original equation, was 2x minus 3, and we have 2 times the quantity, 6 minus x plus 7x. Find where they equal, we set at negative 5. Scroll down, find where they cross, or where they meet. That x value should be the same. So as long as that x value is the same, we know we are correct. Moving on to the next problem. It says the table gives sample data for two quantities, x and y, that are in a proportional relationship. Make sure you remember what that means. When we have that word proportional, that means it goes through the point, 0, 0, which is very helpful because it's saying we need to be able to complete the table and write the equation. And so what you can do, since it gives you another ordered pair, we can actually solve for slope. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say slope is going to be that change in y divided by that change in x. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these 2 points. I'm going to use the point 0, 0, and I'm going to use the point 14, 21. So I have 21 minus 0 divided by 14 minus 0, and that's going to be the same thing as 3 over 2. So our slope is going to be 3 over 2. which is helpful because if I come up with that equation, I can say, well, if I have my equation y equals 3 over 2 times x. So this is going to be the equation for our relationship. So now what we can do is if we have these values, we can plug them in. So I'm going to do, for this first one, I have x equals 64. So I do, let's do it like this. I have y equals 3 over 2 times 64, which is going to be equal to 96. 96. So I'm going to say 96 for this one. Then for the next one, I can say, well, I now have the y value. So instead, I'm going to write, I have 39 equals 3 over 2 times x. Now I just have to solve for x. So I can use those inverse operations. So I'm going to say, I'm going to multiply, draw those parentheses, multiply it by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply it both sides by 2 over 3 to get my value by itself. So I'm going to say x for this one. I'm going to say x equals, what do we say, 26. So this is going to be 26. And then when x equals 1, well, that's just going to be 1 times 3 over 2, which is 3 over 2. So notice how, again, once you have part of this equation, you can solve for those points. Again, you can graph it out if you want to check those values, so to make sure they're good. Otherwise, be sure to ask questions as they come up, and as always, super slam that subscribe button.